Hi everyone, my name is Scarlett and I'm the Community Content Coordinator for the Ehlers-Danlos Society. And today I'm going to be talking about addressing the unmet needs of people living with MCAS. Now to do this, I'm going to be sharing a paper that was published in 2022 with the purpose of better understanding the needs of people living with MCAS, as well as mastocytosis. So the way that this study was conducted is that patient advocacy groups and physician advisors from 12 different countries and regions were asked to develop top 10 lists for people with MCAS and mastocytosis, so 2 lists per country. This research was conducted, it started in 2020 and was ultimately published in 2022 with the goal of proposing possible actions to address these unmet needs. We've talked a lot about diagnosis today, so I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but the diagnostic delays for MCAS and mastocytosis are significant and vary a lot within the community, and the 3 reasons for this cited in the paper were symptom variation, lack of awareness, and lack of reliable tests. Barriers to care were also highlighted throughout this paper many times. So the biggest barrier to care that was reported by every single country was a shortage of healthcare professionals who are knowledgeable about mast cell diseases, particularly in symptom recognition, diagnosis, trigger identification, and management. And with a shortage of knowledgeable healthcare professionals, many people with MCAS and mastocytosis have issues finding healthcare providers who can help them. When there is a shortage of healthcare professionals in a given country, let's say, care is often centralized in one location. So this means that people must travel further distances to get the care that they need. And with this travel and with having a rare disease in general, this comes with financial burdens as well. So we've talked a lot about access to medications today. For MCAS in particular, one really important topic is reactions to medication ingredients. So we've talked a lot about that. It's really important to ensure the availability of medications and tolerated formulas. So as many people have talked about today, people with MCAS often react to medication ingredients. So this makes it really hard to get the care that they need if they can't take the medications that are prescribed to them. Access to off-label medications is also really important. Many of the drugs that are used to treat MCAS right now are used off-label, which means they aren't licensed to treat MCAS. And this limits accessibility to people living with MCAS to get these drugs. So clinical trials are really essential to repurposing these drugs to be used for people with MCAS. Medication burden is also a huge component with MCAS. So usually when we talk about medication burden, we talk about the side effects that come with so many different drugs. But I also think that it's important to mention the logistical burden that comes along with having a rare disease, because if you're on, say, 5 different medications, and for many people with MCAS or EDS and HSD, it's many more than that, but say there's 5 medications that you need each month. Each month you might be talking to your doctor, the pharmacist, insurance companies, there might be shortages. All of these things delay care and present logistical burdens for patients who have limited energy to address these things. Multidisciplinary care is emphasized throughout this paper a lot. So there's a lot of different ways that care can be more multidisciplinary. So one factor is improved communication. So this includes communication between the patient and the physician, as well as between the physician, between specialty physicians and other physicians on an individual's care team. The paper really highlighted a need for specialty physicians to help educate local doctors about how to care for patients with MCAS, and this can help them get the care that they need on a more local level. Centers of excellence, as has been mentioned many times, are essential to patients living with MCAS. Patients with MCAS often have a variety of different symptoms that may affect different organ systems, so they therefore require doctors from different specialties. Centers of excellence can not only be logistically helpful, getting all of your care in one place, but they also improve communication between the providers on an individual's care team. Lastly, mental health care was highlighted as well many times throughout this article, because it's an under-addressed need for people living with MCAS and many other rare conditions, particularly because of the effects of MCAS or just mast cell activation on stress and anxiety, as well as the fact that stress and anxiety can be triggering for MCAS symptoms. Emergency care is really essential to focus on for people with MCAS because some of the symptoms of MCAS can be life-threatening, like anaphylaxis. People with MCAS often feel like they need to educate their healthcare providers about their conditions in order to get the care that they need. But people with MCAS also feel scared that they won't be able to provide the proper education in an emergency so that they're able to get the proper treatment. And it really shouldn't fall on the patient in those emergency situations to be educating their professionals about what to do. For this reason, emergency guidelines are really important to develop so that there are standards of care so that emergency room doctors are more equipped to deal with these emergencies. Emergency plans are kind of a more individual approach. So people with MCAS can work with their providers to come up with a plan that can be signed off by physicians to get the care that they need in these situations. Identification cards similarly can provide some information during an emergency. Another thing that was mentioned that I think is important is the recognition of less common anaphylaxis presentations. So this doesn't always present the same way in everyone, and this can be life-threatening. So it's really important that these symptoms are recognized in an emergency setting so that they can be properly addressed. Lastly, global collaboration was a huge purpose of this project. So there are a lot of ways that we can improve global collaboration for people with MCAS. One being a global registry to facilitate communication and research globally. Education is definitely necessary on many different levels, both to community members, to healthcare professionals, as well as to the general just society to better understand these conditions, particularly because many people with MCAS don't feel that other people understand what they're going through. Consensus guidelines for managing MCAS and many of the other comorbidities are essential. Particularly in this paper, they highlighted the need for guidelines relating to anesthesia, emergency care, and vaccinations. And then collaborative partnerships among the many different active players in the MCAS community. So we've got patients, researchers, patient organizations, healthcare professionals, industry, and government. And this graphic just kind of shows, it's from the paper, and it just shows that there's so many different active players and different ways that they can contribute to help people with MCAS. And I think this is particularly important today because we have many of these different active players in this room, and you can see that there's a lot that we can all be doing for people with these conditions. I just want to end here on what I like to call the rare disease cycle. So I've been actually using this for years now to talk about a variety of different rare diseases, but they often have so much in common, similarly to MCAS, EDS, HSD, POTS. So with under-recognized conditions, there's a lack of information and awareness. This lack of information and awareness leads to underdiagnosis. If healthcare professionals aren't knowledgeable about these conditions, they're less likely to recognize the symptoms and be able to diagnose and help their patients. When a condition is underdiagnosed, this leads to a lack of research because the impact of the research is underestimated. So getting more people diagnosed and really understanding the breadth of this community can be really essential for promoting research efforts on MCAS. And then this lack of research obviously contributes to our lack of information and awareness because obviously research is how we get so much of our information. So as you can see, it's kind of a vicious cycle, but I would like to end on a more positive note than that. So I'd like to remind everyone that by contributing in any of these ways, you can help fix this cycle and turn this downward spiral into an upward climb. And I always like to remind everyone that it's better to light one candle than curse the darkness. So I appreciate you all listening today and learning more about the unmet needs of people with MCAS.